Today we are going to have a nice CPD session with our own member, Mr. Dharmendra, who is a well-known personality in the UAE construction industry, and he is our global vice president. And as you know, he has done a lot of seminars for IAQS. Today, he along with our friend Kalpesh Sangani will be presenting on the what you can say the hot topic of last few years, which is an overview of arbitration process from commencement to enforcement. We all know that in any construction work, there will be at some stage there will be some dispute. Now dispute is a good thing because everybody has to reserve its right. Now it's not a bad thing. You as a contractor, you have to reserve your right. As a client, he has to reserve his right. Now when you have a dispute, there are two ways to resolve it. One is amicable, and the other way is to bring someone to arbitrate and mediate or by legal process. So the most cost-effective way to do a dispute is arbitration. Now why arbitration is being preferred? Because if you have a dispute, a third party will not know how it has been resolved. It's only between you. So people are preferring this, and then it is done after a stage when it becomes more of a personal or a prestige issue where both parties don't want to anymore negotiate. So the whole process, how it happens, tonight we'll hear from Mr. Dharmendra and Mr. Kalpesh. They will highlight how the whole process will go. We know Mr. Dharmendra is our vice president, and he's done his MSc for ICS and CIOB, and he has been a role model for most of us because of his simplicity. And one more thing, when you grow up, you realize you have to be humble and be pleasant. And I think the most pleasant person I have ever met is Mr. Dharmendra. So let's welcome him. We would like to know not much about Mr. Kalpesh. He's been our member, and I have seen him a lot of time in our meetings. And we have been asking a lot of our members to come forward, because maybe I am not a good speaker, but here what we are not looking at the face, or we are not looking at what you are able to speak. We are looking at how you are delivering, what's the content you are delivering, and your knowledge, how you are sharing. It doesn't matter, if you are a good speaker. So come forward, because we are looking for people to share their knowledge. We have asked our director, Mr. Aslam, to give a presentation on how to do cost. Everybody of you have some knowledge somewhere, which you would like you to come and share. So with this, I would like to welcome Mr. Dharmendra.
Good evening, friends. Thank you so much, Sajid, for a very, very kind introduction. And I don't think I deserve that kind of introduction, but thank you so much for your kind words. And when Sajid was asking, when can we have this, or when can I present this talk on the arbitration, I told him that the day you are going to give this award, so that at least I'll be sure that at least 7 people are there to hear me. I think you're all so brave that you took time and came here to this topic. How far you will find interesting, and let us see. And when this topic, why we have chosen this topic, because Kalpesh and me we were doing this LLM, and Kalpesh has finished the second year of LLM and I've done the first year of LLM. When when I started my LLM, that time I told my boss that I'm doing LLM. He said, what? LLM is not good. I said, why? He said, no, lawyers are not good. I said, why? he said, lawyers, what is, he asked me, what is the difference between a bucket of shit and lawyer? I said, what? He says, one is without bucket, one is with bucket. Why you think I told him, sir, that, I want to earn more money, like arbitrators, they get a lot of money. I said, asked, why? I said, one fellow went to arbitrator and asked him that how much you charge for a general advice. So arbitrator told him $500 for free question. So he said, don't you think it is too expensive? He said, yeah, it is expensive. And by the way, what is the third question now? So he has already done. My boss said, but lawyers, always they are lying, and but I can make out when they are lying. I asked him, how do you know the lawyers when they are lying? He said, whenever their lips are moving, I can make out their lying. Anyway, so finally, I convinced him and started my own. And Kalpesh, of course, is senior to me. He's second year, that's why he's getting a bigger chair. So, before, what we'll do a joint presentation. I'll request Kalpesh to start with a few slides first, and then I will take over. And Kalpesh, please.
Good evening, friends. I thank Shivram for his kind words. I think you all can hear me at the back.
Yeah.
It's fine. Okay. Today we shall present a brief on the arbitration process, like from its commencement to its enforcement. Okay, let us first see what are the prerequisites to commence an arbitration. The first one means a dispute has arisen. The next is all the remedies in the contract prior to the arbitration has been exhausted. Standard forms of contract provide certain remedies when a dispute arises. Take for example FIDIC 1987. FIDIC 1987 requires parties to refer the dispute to the engineer for his decision. It requires the parties to try and settle the dispute amicably before proceeding to the arbitration. So unless such remedies are not exhausted, the parties cannot commence with the arbitration. The next is there exists an arbitration clause in the contract. If the contract does not consist an arbitration clause, either of the party cannot force the other party to try and resolve the dispute through arbitration unless until both mutually decide to settle the dispute through arbitration. The next is the party has notified the other party of his intention to arbitrate. So these are the few prerequisites to commence an arbitration. Okay, let us see what are the essential components of a good arbitration agreement. The most general one is the agreement should be in writing. It should mention the place of arbitration. Now the place of arbitration mentions the location where the arbitration is to be conducted. The next is the seat of arbitration, which defines the procedural law. In an arbitration, there are two forms of law. One is called as the substantive law, the other one is called as the procedural law. The substantive law is a law governing the contract, it's the law of the contract, or you can say the law of the tort if there is no contract formed. And the procedural law is a law which governs the arbitration process. So if the seat of the arbitration is not mentioned in the contract, then it is most likely that the law of the place of the arbitration shall be used to govern the arbitration process. The next one is the substantive law. Generally, this is the law which governs the main agreement, the main contract between the parties. The arbitration agreement also requires to mention the rules of arbitration. Either way, it can have its own sets of arbitration rules, or it can be chosen from any professional arbitration bodies such as the Dubai International Arbitration Center, which is DIAC rules, Chartered Institute of Arbitration, CIAB rules, International Chambers of Commerce, ICC rules, London Court of International Arbitration, LIEC rules. Apart from this, few countries have these arbitration rules embedded in their legal system. Take for example England. England, they have an act which is called as the 1996 Arbitration Act. The act itself is a part of the legal system. If such is the scenario, then the act contains the mandatory and the non-mandatory provisions. If the country where the arbitration is to be conducted consists such act, then it is compulsory for parties to follow the mandatory provisions. It is up to the parties to decide on the non-mandatory provisions. The next one is the separability of the arbitration agreement. It is usually recommended to have a separate agreement for the arbitration and an independent clause in the main contract. The reason is in case the main contract itself is held as null and void, or you can say invalid, then a party may argue that since the contract is invalid, all the clause contained in the contract also becomes invalid. But the doctrine of separability says that if the arbitration clause is an independent clause in the contract, which is not a condition precedent, or it doesn't refer to any of the clause in the contract, then the doctrine of separability treats that clause as an autonomous agreement, which means that the clause will still stand even though the agreement becomes null and void. The next is, it should mention the language of the arbitration. It should preferably mention the jurisdiction of the arbitration, whether the arbitration panel shall have the power to decide on its jurisdiction or the court will have the power. This is usually an issue when a dispute consists of corruption issues. Usually the party will argue that the arbitrator does not have any jurisdiction to issue his judgment when the corruption is involved. So it is preferable to mention the jurisdiction of the arbitration in the agreement itself. If the jurisdiction of arbitration is not mentioned, then the arbitrator is at a liberty to decide whether he has the jurisdiction on the matter to be disputed. If he considers that he has the jurisdiction, then he will issue a partial award stating that he has the jurisdiction to arbitrate the matter, or else he may disqualify himself stating that he does not have any jurisdiction to arbitrate the matter and advise the parties to approach the court to decide on the matter of jurisdiction. So it is usually preferable to avoid such dispute when the arbitration commences to include the jurisdiction of the arbitration. The next one is the formation of tribunal. It should state whether the tribunal should be of 1, 3 or 5 members. The next is the provision to challenge the award. Usually this is being kept to minimum in order to maintain the nature of the award as final and binding. So some of few of the challenges which have been allowed by the professional bodies include the tribunal exceeding its powers of substantive jurisdiction, as we discussed before. If the jurisdiction is mentioned in the agreement and the arbitrator surpasses that jurisdiction, the award may be challenged. Or either way, if the jurisdiction is not mentioned in the agreement and the arbitrator issues an award stating that it has the jurisdiction and the court overturns, then the award can be challenged. The next is failing to conduct the proceedings in accordance with the agreed procedures. Prior to the arbitration, the parties and the arbitrators will sit together and agree on the procedures to be followed. For example, the time for submission of claims, submission of statement of defense, any counter claims, expert witnesses, oral witnesses. So this will be decided prior to the arbitration. If the arbitrator does not follow the said procedures, then the award can be challenged. Or it can also be challenged if the proceedings are conducted in an impartial way. Take for example, if the arbitrator does not give enough opportunity to a party to represent his claim, then the award can be challenged. The next is failure to deal with all the issues. For example, if the arbitration is conducted for suppose 6 issues and the arbitrator issues the award for 5, the award can be challenged. Arbitrator is required to issue his decision on all of the claims raised in the arbitration. The next is uncertainty and ambiguity to the award. If the award is ambiguous or uncertain, it can be also be challenged. The next is award obtained by fraud or against the public policy. This against the public policy means that suppose there is an agreement between the parties with regards to gambling, and the dispute arises, and the arbitrator issues the award on that point of dispute, and if the gambling is against the public policy of the country where it is conducted or where the substantive law is, the award can be challenged. Let us move on to the commencement of arbitration. This is under the umbrella of any professional arbitration bodies. This is the procedure which is set prior to the actual arbitration begins. The claimant, after notifying the other party of his intention to commence the arbitration, shall write to the institute of his intention to commence the arbitration and the appointment of the arbitrators. Next is the institute then notifies the respondent and the claimant of the receipt of the notification of commencement of arbitration proceedings. The initial notice which has been issued by the claimant to the institute should contain all the details, full details of the parties, nature and description of dispute, statement of relief sought, copy of agreement, comment on the place of arbitration, applicable law and language, requirements of the nomination of arbitrators. After this, then within 30 days or so, the respondent is required to file an answer with the response to the relief sought or any counterclaims. Thereafter, the procedure of appointment of arbitrator begins. If it's a 3 arbitrators tribunal, 1 arbitrator shall be appointed by each party, and the institute shall appoint the 3rd arbitrator, who will act as a chairman of the tribunal. A party may raise an objection if it feels that the arbitrator selected by the other party has some conflict of interest which may affect his impartiality. Before this, it's also the duty of the arbitrator, once he is selected, he should clarify his position whether he has any conflict of interest. If so, then he should, before the parties object, should resign if he has the conflict of interest. The institute may notify the arbitrators to clarify his position. The arbitrators may disagree to the party's objection, clarifying his position, or may offer to resign. In such circumstances, the decision issued by the institute is final. Once the arbitration tribunal has been formed, the institute passes on all the submissions made by the parties to the tribunal. Immediately thereafter, the tribunal draws the terms of reference, which identifies and records the following: the details of the parties' names, addresses, a summary of parties' respective claim, and the relief sought by each party with an indication of the amount claimed or counterclaim, a list of the issues to be determined, a place of arbitration, the rules of arbitration, language, applicable, procedural and substantive law. Okay, the next procedure shall be explained by Mr. Dharmendra. I would request him to take over the stage. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kalpesh. I think now you all relax because the difficult part is over. That's why I told Kalpesh to do this. Now the easy part starts. The procedural meeting, once terms of reference in the previous slide, as he mentioned, terms of reference, why it is important? Because in the terms of reference, the arbitrator, the panel, they list out all the issues which are being asked by the claimant. Otherwise, what happens? Sometimes the claim is so huge that even the people who are handling out dealing with the claim, they don't know what exactly the contractor wants. There are so many complicated issues built within the issues. So once the terms of reference are extracted from all those claims by the arbitrator, and he shows to both the parties, and both the parties they say yes, these are the claims, then that process becomes very easy, because at least all 3 arbitrators and both the parties, they know what are the issues. Instead of arbitrators keep on dealing with the issues, end of the claim, end of the day, the issue and award, and then the parties say, by the way, what your issue? We were not even asking for this one. To avoid that kind of scenario, these terms of reference are very important. Now the procedural meeting starts. As a part of this procedural meeting, the final written submission to be submitted by defendants no later than one slide in this one. how the slides we have made, that actually means like how the arbitrator will issue the directions. So, once you understand how the arbitrator is issuing the direction, that will make us understand this clearly. Once after the arbitrator is appointed, he will call for a meeting, the preliminary meeting which is called. After that meeting, he will direct the parties. The direction will be, he will say that he will list out the procedure. So the procedure will be, there shall be exchange of written statement of case as follows. Statement of case shall be delivered by claimant no later than 9th February. This is just a date only. So what he is telling to the parties that the statement of case, which is the statement to be submitted by claimant, should be submitted by a certain date. The statement of defense and statement of counter claims shall be delivered no later than 1st March. So it means what arbitrator is telling to parties that once the claimant has submitted the statement of claim, then the defendant has to submit a statement of reply and a statement of counter claim. Then we come to the slide. The next step, what arbitrator will say in his order, that final written statement to be submitted by defendants by a certain date, final written statement to be submitted by claimant by this date, further request for particulars, if requested by either party, shall be delivered within 2 weeks of order. There shall be disclosure of documents wherein either party may submit request to other party to produce documents. This disclosure of documents is a very important thing in arbitration, which many of us we are not aware, including me, I was not aware, that a party in arbitration, once a party knows that other party has got some document in his possession which can be used to him, then he can ask for disclosure of those documents. Say for example, like the contractor is having a or there is a dispute between the contractor and the employer, and the contractor knows that employer has got certain report from the engineer in respect of that claim, some internal report. That report is in favor of the contractor, but employer is not willing to, he has never shown that report to contractor, means why should he show that report? But in case contractor comes to know that there is something which the client has got, then he can, under disclosure of document, he can ask for that, but definitely he needs to establish or demonstrate to arbitrators that why they think that other party may have this document. Maybe some CC of the letter contractor got, or something he got through which he came to know that engineer has, or in any of the progress meeting he came to know. So based on that he can ask for this document from the other party. Then the arbitrator will put in his order that statement in writing of witness of fact shall be exchanged no later than 15 days before commencement of hearing. Since there is no agreement between the parties in respect of appointment of expert witness, I or arbitrators we decide that one independent expert shall be appointed by the tribunal who shall submit his report by so and so date. In case any agreement is there, then it will depend how many expert witnesses will be called. Opening statements from claimant and respondent shall be submitted to a panel with a copy to other party within so many days. Then the arrangement for first hearing, because this is the pre-hearing preliminary meeting, so he has to confirm the first hearing where and what date it will be. So then he can say the commencement date is so and so 13 July. First meeting, it will last for 3 days. Sitting hours will be from this to this time. Venue will be so and so hotel. Legal representation by which attorney or which lawyers are representing each party, he will put the names, and then also he will say that whether he will take the evidence on oath, and the post hearing brief, once the hearings are finished and the parties are required to submit their post hearing brief within so many days. So basically this is all the procedure which arbitrator is communicating to the parties through this order, which is called order. Then he will say in his order that once all this process is over, we shall in due course make a reasoned award, save as to the cost, except the cost. Cost means cost of the arbitration, cost incurred for the arbitration by both the parties. We will come to that issue, why he says that without cost, save as to the cost. then in his order he would say the parties while submitting any document to panel must copy to other party. There shall be no communication by telephone between the parties or with the arbitrator. This is to ensure that nothing goes on between the parties or between one party and arbitrator, which other party doesn't know, just to have a common ground for communication. The cost of this order shall be cost in reference. So this is very important. You can see that even he is issuing the order, and in the end he is saying this cost is part of the arbitration cost which parties have to give, and he will sign. So this was the order, why instead of going through each step, we have mentioned that this is a procedure in the arbitration. So procedure as in the previously explained in the arbitrator's order, these things will take: submission of written statement, submission of claim, defense, reply, disclosure of documents, submission of actual witnesses, statement by parties, submission of expert witness. I think you may be aware that factual witness means people who have lived that dispute, they are called factual witnesses. Expert witness means anybody who can give good opinion or an expert opinion about that issue, they are called expert opinion. They may not be associated with that dispute. And then once all this is done, then the actual hearings start. In hearings, both parties may or may not be represented by lawyers, and the cross-examination by the tribunal as by the other party, that is called cross-examination.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
The durations, all the time limits.
Yeah.
Is there any specific duration to be followed in all the arbitration process, or it can be agreed between the parties?
See, this one, that the general guideline is that arbitration award should be issued within 6 months of first hearing, preliminary hearing. So based on that 6 month duration, then what kind of steps parties have agreed? Like the parties have agreed that there will be exchange of document in a 3-stage process. Once the claimant will submit, then the defendant, then the claimant. Then after that, how many hearings will be there? How many this expert witnesses? And once that procedure is agreed, then maybe arbitrator can calculate backwards. He knows that from 6 months that award is to be issued. He can calculate that how many steps are there. Based on that, he can fix the duration. But if the parties agree that no problem, 6 months is not a big deal, you take your time, let us go for 9 months, but give us enough time for between each step. If parties agree, then that can be extended. If parties don't agree and they want to stick to the 6 months, then arbitrator will fix those durations accordingly to ensure that it finishes within 6 months.
But Dubai Center for Arbitration, they don't have any
Yes,
standard
everybody
regulations.
has got their own guidelines, but we don't want to go into any specific professional bodies. But even the Dubai International Arbitration Center guideline is 6 months. The preferred duration, the guided duration for issue of award is 6 months from first hearing. So the thing is, it is very difficult for any body, any professional body even to fix those durations, because it all depend on how many steps, the kind of
Complexity
claim,
of the case.
how many hearings are required. So unless that is agreed, it is very difficult to fix the duration. So we can say that it is to be agreed between the parties. If parties are not able to agree, then it is absolute discretion of the arbitrator in case of disagreement to fix those duration to complete the arbitration in the agreed time frame.
But all these to be stipulated in the agreement that prior to starting the arbitration process.
No, I mean that during this meeting, this agreement, this order which we said that arbitrator has to issue this order, this order is subsequent to a meeting. In the meeting, both the parties will be there, arbitrator panel is there, so they have discussed all these issues. If they are able to agree, so that agreement will be issued as a part of the order. If they are not able to agree, then arbitrator will use his best discretion and put his duration and put in this order. So after this, all this process which may take minimum say around 6 months or so, then the process comes the award process. Now, award, the general guideline by all the professional arbitration bodies is that it should be a reasoned award. It should state claim history and the reasons and all, not in great length, but at least in that much length that if a party really wants to challenge the award, it should be clear that what is the basis of that award or what kind of considerations arbitrator has given in the award. General guideline has been discussed 6 months from first hearing. Other than the final award, if parties agree or if the guidelines of professional arbitration body guide then the preliminary, interim or partial or final award can be given before the final award.
This is, excuse me, what is this interlocutory?
Interlocutory is called intermediary award, like it is not a final award, but if the parties agree and the procedural law of that arbitration agreement allows for intermediary award, so arbitrators can issue intermediate award before the final award.
But you have the interim award also, partial. So why you are telling this interlocutory?
No, no.
Miscellaneous paper.
Yeah, okay, this one actually interim, there is a difference between interim and interlocutory, I'm not sure.
This interlocutory award is the award which cannot be challenged. Interim award can be challenged, but not the interlocutory award.
Even it will be against the seat of.
Yeah, I gave an example regarding the jurisdiction. Suppose arbitration has been started and the party objects to the jurisdiction and the arbitrator makes a decision for the jurisdiction, on the jurisdiction, then award cannot be challenged until the arbitration is finished. After the arbitration, he can go and challenge. Interim award can be challenged anytime. The interlocutory award cannot be challenged.
Then cost, that in the award, like the cost will come later, but the cost includes all the arbitrators' fee, administrative cost of the institute, cost of venues to organize the arbitration meetings, travel of arbitrators, hotel stay, telephone, whatever cost we can think of, it all is part of the arbitration cost. Now, cost normally, why arbitrators are not issuing as a part of the first award, that there is a like general concept in arbitration claims that a party, at certain stage of arbitration, give an offer of settlement to other party in a sealed envelope, which is called offer without prejudice, save as to the cost. So it means if the claim is, say, the claimant has claimed 50 million, and at certain stage the defendant gives a sealed envelope to the claimant that okay, I am willing to offer you 10 million. That envelope will remain in the custody of the parties only. It will not. That will remain sealed. Once the arbitrator has issued the final award, has issued the award except for the cost, if that award is less than the offer of settlement which was given by the defendant, then it means the situation is the claimant at that point of time, if he would have accepted the defendant's offer, it would not have resulted in cost from that point onward. The arbitration would have finished. Since he did not accept and continued with the arbitration and finally got the less money as compared to what was being offered, so based on that, the cost from that point onward will be borne by the defendant because he did not accept. This is called another normal popular term called a bank offer.
No, kindly explain.
Yeah.
So,
Say for example, arbitration, the 6 months process is there. At end of 3 months, the defendant realized that he is going to lose the arbitration, and against a claim of 50 million, he offered a settlement of 10 million to that claimant in a sealed envelope. Now, at that point of time,
this happens during the meeting.
during the arbitration, anytime, as long as award is this process is going on, anytime. To avoid going into further arbitration, party may think that why not to stop this cost and give the offer and amicably settle.
Is it disclosed to the claimant? This
Yeah,
amount?
claimant definitely would know. Then only he will say whether I can accept or not.
No, because we are referring to sealed envelope.
Sealed envelope means as far as arbitrators are concerned, they should not know that. Because if they know the offer, then it may affect their award. Judgment, yeah. So from that point, if the offer has not been accepted, and finally, if the award is less, then the claimant has to bear the cost. But if the award is more than the offer, then definitely the arbitrator will normally decide the cost in against the losing party. That is the normal for the cost. It says the cost follows the event, or cost goes against the losing party. And also, in some cases, what happens, the cost is a huge cost, but arbitrators are required to ensure that they simply don't, award all the cost to the winner, because sometimes the winner, the winning party, has wasted a lot of time of arbitrators, by postponing the meetings or by asking huge, just to ensure that it may not happen that a party, is trying to take undue advantage of his strong financial position by putting the other party into grave loss. So based on that, if he feels any unnecessary cost has been incurred, that he may not allow in favor of winning party. Yeah, once the award is issued, then any party may challenge the award as on the procedural ground that we had mentioned in the previous slide. The panel will review the challenge and may confirm the award or may correct the award for any clerical or typographical error or issue as an addendum. While the arbitration is going on and the parties agree for any amicable settlement, the arbitrator on the request of the party may assist in finalizing. At a certain point, parties want to settle, that is most welcome, and they can request the arbitrator. The arbitrator will make that award as a amicably settled award or amicable settlement agreement. Once the award is issued, then the question comes for the enforcement. Because why enforcement, even I had previously doubted why enforcement. Once the award is issued, why the one party doesn't give the money to other and finish it off? Because what happens that once the party has to give, nobody wants to give money to anybody. So unless there is an order from court, nobody wants to give money. Just where somebody got a paper from arbitrator, he will say, why should I give you? No problem, I will not give you. So just to force people to pay, that's why the concept of enforcement is there. Enforcement means getting the award ratified from the court, from the country which was the seat of the arbitration. So if the arbitration is in Dubai and the procedural law of Dubai is being UAE law is there, so the parties will have to, or the winning party will have to go to the UAE court. Losing party may challenge the enforcement on the limited grounds mentioned in the agreement as we saw in the previous slide. If there are valid reasons for challenge, then the court may refer back the award for review by the tribunal in part or full, or if the court feels that it was a complete mishandling and the reasons which are mentioned, valid reasons for challenge, those are absolutely clear cut, have been violated, then they may completely set aside the award in full even. The main problem in the enforcement, as we discussed, that when the assets of the losing party are in other country, so it means even if the case has been won here and the party gets the ratification from the court here, but finally, what is the use of even getting the court judgment when other party doesn't have any money here? How to recover the money here? So it means only way to recover the money is either that party gives on its own as per the UAE court order, or if they are not giving, then that party has to go to the other country where his assets are there and then apply to that court for freezing his assets, so that that money can be recovered by freezing his asset. To facilitate this process, otherwise what will happen that one country's judgment, why any other country should honor and respect. So to facilitate that process, to resolve this issue that one country honors other country's court judgment, this kind of treaties, one of the key treaties, which is called New York Convention 1958 on recognition and enforcement of foreign arbitral award, that was signed, and slowly, all countries are signing. Initially, maybe 30-40 countries would have signed, but now the status is that 146 out of 193 UN members have signed the treaty. So now it's very easy for enforcement from one country to other. Like green are practically represents all those countries who have signed. Red represents those countries who have not yet signed. Of course, you will go to that slide. Other than about treaty, like most. This is a treaty, which is on a global platform. Other than that, many countries have joined bilateral treaties for enforcement. For example, UAE is definitely part of New York since treaty since 2006, and also UAE has got bilateral treaties with Egypt, Syria, and other neighboring countries. Costs. Now, cost, how much? Just to give you an indication of what is the cost involved in the arbitration. This is the cost which is as per ICC, which is International Chamber of Commerce. As per their guideline, what is the cost? So okay, if, just let us go to this a claim of 100 to 500 million. So the all the figures in dollars. So for a claim of that nature, which is normal in UAE, you can see that these claims are nothing less than 100 million. So of course that is US dollar, yeah. So their own expense, which is ICC, they will charge $113,000, which is around $500,000 dirham. Arbitrator's fee minimum as per their guideline is $121,000, which is approximately say 400,000 dirham. Maximum fee for more skilled arbitrators is $583,000, which is approximately 2 million dirhams. This is for one arbitrator. So if it is a panel of 3 arbitrators and parties choose all skilled or very qualified experienced arbitrator, so one arbitrator means 2 million dirhams, so 3 arbitrators means 6 million dirhams. 6 million plus 0.5 is the government, the ICC's own. So 6.5 million is only this cost of arbitration and the professional bodies charge. In addition, the charges will be the party's own expenses, hotels, telephone calls, the cost of lawyers. So you can imagine that instead of 6 million, definitely finally the cost won't be less than in the range of minimum 10 million, approximately minimum. I know some of the cases in Dubai which arbitration is going on. I don't know what I have been made to understand that in some of the cases the arbitration cost has reached up to 60 to 70 million. Even the arbitration has not even finished as of now. Halfway itself it has reached 60 to 70 million. Estimated cost means like as of now whatever has been spent and estimating that how much, so 60 to 70 they estimate that by the time arbitration will finish.
If this cost exceed the maximum, if there is a main contract and if there is a liquidated damages applied, say maximum recoverable is 10%, and such arbitration cost is exceeding that, then what is the point
No,
of
liquidated damage has nothing to do with this claim.
Yeah,
The claim can be the liquidated, if there is a 500 million contract and liquidated damage is a 10%, say 50 million. That is a separate issue altogether. Against 50 means that has nothing to do with the claim. A contractor can claim in a 500 million contract, he can claim for 400 million as a losses for whatever reason. So that claim can be big regardless of amount of liquidated damages.
During all the process, who is managing the show? Who is
Yeah.
handling the?
This is complete, discretion, power is all this tribunal. Everything is controlled, managed by arbitration tribunal. In case of challenges, in case the parties are challenging like jurisdiction or at any stage, then depending on what is written in the agreement, that who's like authorized or who has the jurisdiction or who has the authority to tackle those challenges, that depends. If arbitration panel has the authority to tackle those challenges, like in terms of jurisdiction, then they themselves will take that challenge and decide on that okay, that challenge is right or wrong or whatever. But in some of the cases, in some of the arbitration agreements or in some of the procedural laws of some countries, there are some different provisions that where the court has to get involved in and where arbitration panel can decide. So like there are two kind of procedure as Kalpesh mentioned in arbitration law of some country, mandatory and non-mandatory. So for mandatory provision, out of mandatory provision there are say 50% or 30% provisions where court has to get involved in case in case to decide of any challenge or whatever. But for 70% of the things, arbitration panel itself they can decide on that challenge. Challenge or disagreement or whatever. Say for example, like during this preliminary meeting, the one party says that why to go for this this actual hearings. Let us reduce the cost and go for written statements, and it's a small, not a big claim. So if other party is not agreeing, they are saying no. We are interested to submit a written statement that will. We are interested to have actual hearings, not only a statement, written statement. In that case, if the disagreement is there, then panel they are the final authority what they decide. The guideline is, since arbitration is a mutual consent, the process where mutual consent, it is started with a mutual consent to arbitrate. As far as possible, the arbitrators have to go with the consent of the parties, but where not, their discretion is the final. other than those provisions, there the arbitration law says the court has to get involved.
After the arbitration finished, after the award has been issued,
Yeah.
if one party does not want to accept it, they want to go to court. Are they free to go to court and scrap the previous award?
See, now the court, like since when we say the arbitration award is final, except the challenge is only on certain limited grounds. So the party has to see that, what are the grounds available in their arbitration agreement to challenge that award. Now, as we said, there are 3-4, very limited grounds, like if the arbitrator has not given a fair chance to both the parties to represent their case, or the award is ambiguous, or on at certain stage, they came to know that arbitrator has some conflict of interest and he has not disclosed, and that later, some party came to know. Or like one of the case, I think all of you know that Bechtel case, that where the requirement in the contract of UAE law was to take oath for all the, it was must for all the witnesses to take oath, but that oath procedure was not administered by arbitrator. Or the award is against public policy. So these are the limited grounds where if the party challenges, the court will see whether that challenge is valid or not, and based on that they will either quash that challenge or give the award back to arbitrators to look into one or two issues, or completely set aside the award if they feel that that ground is absolutely clear-cut case of violation of the grounds based, which are the grounds for challenging the arbitration.
So it does mean that the court clearly agrees or is in agreement with what they have done. Of course, how they have done is different. But they accept their judgment or whatever.
The court is not supposed to go into the merits of the case. Like if the arbitrator has issued a 50 million claim, the court is not supposed to see that maybe that this claim award is too excessive, and they are not supposed to go into those issues. So, but procedural issues only.
Yeah.
But how the arbitrators have worked out that claim amount and those things, court has that is not the valid reason for court to set aside the award.
Even in many countries also, like even if the arbitrator makes an error on the point of law, the court has given the decision in favor of the award, in favor of the arbitrator. Even the arbitrator has made a mistake on the point of law, which does not affect the award given by the arbitrators to a much extent. Even in such scenarios, the court has not kept aside the award, it has ratified the arbitrator's award. So this is the autonomy given to the arbitration process by the courts.
This point is very important because all courts know, worldwide, globally, all courts know that the losing party doesn't want to pay. So definitely, they want to challenge on one or other ground. So all courts know. So, but knowing that importance of arbitration and knowing it is binding, and knowing that parties have mutually agreed to go for arbitration in the contract, so all the courts have been, including UAE, very supportive of arbitration. And if they feel that this challenge is on not fair grounds, simply then definitely, even if suppose small error, those kind of things is there, as you pointed out, they will not set aside the award. Maximum, they will refer back the award to tribunal to correct or modify and issue an addendum. But setting aside the award, this was one of the rarest cases, which this where I told you that because of this not taking the oath, because there, what I understand that the courts, the view was by not taking the oath, the complete, the sincerity which is expected from the witnesses, that is completely gone. So since that is completely gone, so there is no relevance of their statements and their expert reports. So since that validity is not there, which was the basis of award, so that's why it was like a fundamental, in their court's opinion, it was a fundamental kind of issue because of that which they set aside that award.
The arbitration fees is shared by both the parties, client
Yes,
and
yeah.
Is there any special fee for if it is any party is going to challenge that?
See, the challenge of fee by the parties, that in some of the arbitration laws, that power also is with the court. that if a party applies to the court that this fee is excessive, then the court definitely has the power, but they will interfere in that kind of matter if the cost being charged is excessive, disproportionately high. But in most of the cases, the parties would have agreed to arbitrator's own cost because once the party wants an arbitrator to work as the arbitrator, so the procedure is you will write to the arbitrator that I want to have you as an arbitrator, and arbitrator will send a response to him that okay, I am willing to be your arbitrator, or willing to be not your, willing to be arbitrator in this dispute. I have no conflict of interest, and my fee is this much. This party has to confirm his fee. So in 95% of the circumstances, this fee will be pre-agreed by the person who has appointed or approached that arbitrator. So later going to the court that this person has charged me excessive, very rarely it will happen because this is pre-agreed, unless the arbitrator finally starts staying in a 7-star hotel instead of his entitlement, if it was as per institution rules, suppose it is 4-star and is staying in a 7-star hotel. If his entitlement as per institute rule is economic class, he is traveling by first class. So these kind of things, yes.
Many cases I have read that he will be bought by the losing party only because this claimant went because of that right.
Correct, yeah, no, that is right. No, this question was that as long as the arbitration is going on, both the parties have to bear the cost. Once the award is made, and the first award and second award for the cost, that is the award which arbitrator will decide that who has to bear the cost and to what extent. Is it all cost by losing party or a part or a substantial part, because a small part was unnecessarily incurred by the winning party by hiring very expensive lawyer. Suppose a reasonable cost of hiring a lawyer is X, and the winning party they are very rich and they are hiring lawyers who are charging 3 times the normal lawyer rate. So those kind of things may be disallowed by the arbitrator.
Because of him only he was bound to go to arbitration.
Sorry?
If he had fairly paid, he was not willing to go to the arbitration.
Yeah.
So this claimant.
Yeah.
So that party, this losing party,
Yeah.
forced him to go to the arbitration.
Correct. That is correct. That is why that in the 99% of the circumstances, the cost follows the event, means the losing party has to bear the cost. Losing party means defendant, that means claimant will get all the cost. I think around lost, right?
This will include the cost of the lawyers hired by the other party also?
Yes, yeah. Only disallowing, as I mentioned, those costs if the party has hired very expensive lawyers, then maybe the arbitrator will allow a reasonable cost. Otherwise, yes. So this was the general arbitration thing which we discussed. Now we will go to few slides on the Dubai, like what are the professional bodies in Dubai and UAE like one is this DAFC LCIA, which is Alliance of Dubai International Financial Center and London Court of International Arbitration. This is working as one arbitration professional body. It has its own legal system which is through a decree which was approved or issued, which is called DAFC Law Number 1, and it is based on UN CITROL model law. Now UN CITROL, this is the United Nations Commission for International Trade Law. It is one of the very popular or very global body for issuing model arbitration law or model arbitration rules which have been followed by many countries. It applies to, I think the doubt until few years government, until last year the doubt was whether this body can overlook arbitration which are outside DIFC. That also recently through a decree it has been the law is that yes, they can oversee the arbitration which are even outside DIFC. The one change from the normal UAE code, it follows common law, because as you all know that Dubai is a civil procedure law, so, but these courts or this arbitration body in the arbitration they will follow the common law. So the difference is that in common law, many case laws are there, and many concepts, many doctrines in common law are different to civil procedure law. So those doctrines and those case laws, those will be definitely prescriptive for arbitrators if they are following common law. Yeah, and through decree this has been issued that the awards issued by DAFC LCIA are enforceable in Dubai as well as within UAE. Other bodies, this I think we all know that this is Dubai International Arbitration Center, which is in alliance with Dubai Chamber of Commerce and Industry. It has its own arbitration rules, not law, rules, and which is called DISA Rules 2007. Again, the courts which are applicable to this one are Dubai courts, which follow civil law, as you know, jurisdiction entire Dubai, language of arbitration and English, unless otherwise agreed by the parties, and yeah, the non-mandatory provisions which parties can or up to them to, that will govern the arbitration procedural issues in UAE. Conciliation and Arbitration Center. Again, it has its own rules called ADCC Procedural Regulation. The difference here is that this arbitration, their language is in Arabic, unless otherwise agreed by the parties. So the difficulty is that if the defendant, he wants to be difficult and he knows that claimant is English speaking, and he will ensure that it runs in Arabic to make the claimant's life difficult. So that one small drawback is there. Yeah, that's all. I think it was a long session, and we discussed few questions, but open to any more questions, me and Kalpesh, if any doubts or any further.
In case of any disputes,
Yeah.
and it is directly approached, the court is approached without following the arbitration procedure. In that case, will court insist to follow this route, then come back to us?
Yeah, correct. So
Is
that
it a
is
must?
part of the UAE civil procedure law. One of the articles says that in the first hearing in court, the party who wants to go for arbitration, he has to point out that there is an arbitration agreement. So in the first hearing, if he points out, then the court will refer them to arbitration. But in case they miss to point out to the court that in the first hearing that there is not, then the court will continue. Then that opportunity is lost.
What will be the roles and responsibility of the engineer during the arbitration process?
It up to the okay, like just take FIDIC 87, that contract which we are all aware of, and up to in FIDIC 87, the role of the engineer finishes once he has issued a engineer's decision. After that, once the party is notified the arbitration for arbitration, then in the contract there is no role for the engineer. But in most of the cases, as per my experience, what happens once the engineer role finishes, it means as a supplementary agreement. If in many cases I have seen that the clients are trying to hire the engineer so that they can support them in arbitration. Now it is for engineer to accept that appointment or not, because it may be a conflict of interest situation for the engineer. Because at the one side, like he is supporting the client against the contractor, and the other hand, his role is a fair, under FIDIC it is unfair. He is supposed to be fair. But so it means once engineer's decision has been given, then engineer's role finishes, unless he forgets about conflict of interest and joins the client and tries to support him in this arbitration. Otherwise, contractually his role finishes.
Suppose the client
according
is...
to 99, he can act on behalf of employer.
Yeah, but in that one, in 99, like it is again straight to adjudication. So, in my okay, there definitely the contract does not say that engineer has a supplementary agreement if he wants to enter into a separate contract with the employer to help him in adjudication or arbitration. The contract does not say. It is for every engineer to see that as a part of his conflict of interest, he should work for that or not. Suppose suppose one case can be that the contract has finished, the engineer has performed all his roles under the contract, and arbitration is 3 years later. Maybe in that case he is not he has no more conflict of interest, because whatever obligations he has discharged, and that contract is, as far as his role is done. then I don't think at least I can't think of any conflict of interest situation if he wants to have a separate contract with client and to support him as an independent consultant.
You see,
It will be a conflict of decision. Maybe he is going against his decision.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, if it means that once the invitation comes from the client to the engineer that okay, I want to hire you as my advisor, then the engineer has to see that this point, suppose his own decisions during the course of the contract were wrong, or maybe he was trying to hide them or something, whatever. And if he feels that tomorrow, like once he supports the client, his his advice will be different. In that case, he has to assess the risk that is the client going to sue him that because of you now you are giving me this advice, previous advice was wrong, and because of you I'm going to lose out. So that he has to assess the risk. That maybe he will be sued by the client as a separate case altogether. That is right. Why I'm saying that because we work as an engineer, and I know that like many of us we are working as an engineer. We get a lot of invitations from the client to participate or help them during arbitration proceeding. Of late, in the last 2 years, a lot of arbitration is going on, and in 100% of the cases, we had to refuse because this kind of discussion of which you are having, same discussion we had in our office, that all these issues, will be a lot of complications will be there. So this thing, that's why you can say that the question was that how long the engineer's role is finished when the decision is issued.
Suppose the
If
engineer is
engineer's decision is being compromised in the arbitration, and arbitration gives a different opinion than the engineer, so does professional indemnity does not cover this one? So
No,
it's likely to be there, isn't it?
No, it depends. See, it's a very subjective issue that why the party lost there and what was the case here. For a client to prove a case to engineer that because of you I lost the case and you told me to go to arbitration.
It's not about the loss. I'm
Okay.
talking about if there is a decision being given, he to act as a fair party on the contract.
Okay.
99 as well as 8.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Now, in such cases, if such a decision is being, changed by the arbitration,
Correct,
and says that it's wrong decision,
Yeah,
then
yeah.
we go by it. So, does engineer doesn't he become liable for the case?
No, I was answering this question only. This is a very subjective issue. Whether it was negligence or not, that, say, take a real-time case. Say, if one engineer has given his decision, and based on the substantiation which the contractor has given, he has reviewed the substantiation, and he feels that based on the substantiation, contractor has no entitlement or entitlement of X amount. Based on that, he gave an engineer's decision. During arbitration, the contractor may come up with 10 times better substantiation than what he has given to engineer, and accordingly the arbitrator's award will be 10 times better than engineer. In that case, the client cannot prove that the engineer's it was gross negligence by engineer, because engineer can always say that based on what substantiation what I had got, this was my view. Unless his engineer's decision is so obviously wrong that easily his negligence can be demonstrated by the client, then yes, then definitely. But it may not be that easy for the client to demonstrate that.
Most
The more easy circumstances are that if he has lost arbitration because of some of the mistakes by the engineer during course of the contract, like not giving the design in the right time, those there the case is more documented, that yes, contract will demonstrate that I asked for this design on so and so date, I was supposed to get the design within 14 days, I got after 2 months, which are recorded through document. So it is more easy for client to sue the engineer on those grounds rather than showing that his award was less or more.
Usually, the duties expected from the engineer is reasonable skill and care. And until the engineer issues or he provides the clients the duties with the reasonable duty and care, the court cannot hold the engineer responsible for any negligence or any loss. But this is a gross issue. For example, take for example the decisions issued by the courts. These decisions are being changed by the higher court. You cannot say that the lower court has made a gross negligence and the cost should be paid back to the parties. No. Until unless the the duties are performed with reasonable skill and care, the engineer cannot be held responsible for any negligence.
Even to,
And can the arbitration award be disclosed also?
that is if the parties want. If the parties want, then it can be published on, it can be disclosed. It all
Because then how will you pursue the engineer? Because without
when his client knows, the client, you would no, suppose parties, they agree that, okay, yes, because there is a provision even in UAE law also that if the parties agree, that can be made public. So if the client, really, if he has got the consent from parties, maybe your point is right, but definitely with the consent of the parties, not otherwise.
Excuse me, sir. This tribunal, our arbitration tribunal, and afterwards Dubai coast.
Yeah.
Where is the DIFT court?
No,
What is the role of the
DIFC court, there are two options available now. Until now, only one option was there, which was Dubai International Arbitration Center. Now, then, by decree, this was LCA and DIFC, that arbitration center was set up. For a few years, it was they were authorized only to handle the cases which are generating from DIFC area. So their jurisdiction was limited. But of late, I don't know what pull they have put that now through a separate decree, they are also one of the authorized body to oversee. So now basically we have a choice now. The parties who are more interested to go for civil procedure law kind of approach, they are happy with both the parties are happy, they will go there. If both the parties are more happy with common law kind of approach, they will go for other one. If so that's why in the beginning we said that it should be mentioned in the arbitration agreement that who will be the overseeing body, because if finally if nothing is written and one party wants to go to one and then there the conflict starts and then the party whichever wants to go to one particular arbitration institute, he will be having because he is the one who is going for arbitration.
One more question.
I hope this is the last question, please.
Okay.
Yeah.
In the arbitration agreement, it is written that the arbitrator will be from my community only.
Okay.
In the civil law, there is no problem. Once I am going to DIFC, it is common law.
Actually pleased to see you, all of you again for the CPD. This time we are going to present, we are going to appreciate and honor about 6 or 7 members now of our IAQS members who got achieved postgraduate degree from Hiriatwat University, MSc and MRHS. Can we give them a big round of applause? Actually 8 members, 1 or 2 members probably not to come. Yes, Paul?
Yeah.
Okay. Can I request Mr. Matthew, our Global Vice President, to come forward and to start the presentation. I would request Jayant Kumar Sadasiv. Jayant Kumar Sadasiv, working for Parcels Overseas Limited as quantity surveyor. One more. Yeah, this should be there. Do you want to give again? Or to take photograph?
So that is coming in this case.
And the next is SS Umar Mughadin. Mr. SS Umar Mughadin, working for Hamilton Design International, senior quantity. Very good. Can I call Sanjit, can you please come forward? Mr. Natarajan Ramaiah. Mr. Natarajan Ramaiah, Boston University. He is working as senior quantity surveyor. Dharmendra, can you go forward? Mr. Rajesh Kumar Rajendra, working for Japan Properties. Kalpesh, can you please? He's our chief guest, so Ms. Rishna Akbar Shah. Not come? No. Okay. Mr. Sudan Rajangam. Mr. Sudan Rajangam. Working for Rack Property Trust. Thank you very much. See, one last point I would like to add, as always, getting qualifications, MRCs, MRICS, it's good, very good, but it is just a beginning. We have to spend some time for the professional development. We have to enhance our knowledge so that the qualifications what we achieve, based on which we can deliver and demonstrate in our workplace, that we truly achieve, and that will really add value to our qualifications. And I would request all of you to come forward this kind of CPD sessions. Not only here, there are many CPD events. Go and attend and enhance your knowledge. And one last point is IIQS is growing not only in terms of quantity, but in terms of quality as well. Because, those days we used to invite people. Now we are, our members, like Mr. Dharmendra and Kalpesh, they are conducting seminar. Can we give them a big round of applause? So the other members who got is Mr. Nizam Moideen, and he got MRICS. He's working for overseas AST as project quantity surveyor, and Rekha Ramakrishnan Nair. Ms. Rekha Ramakrishnan Nair, she is working for Emirates Roads Contracting as QS. She got MSc quantity surveying from Heriot-Watt University. Can we give them a...
Friends, today you have seen our own members have carried out this session in fantastically nice way. Mr. Dharmendra knows that there is a proverb in my language, in our language, "Ghar ki murgi dal barabar." Anyhow, they are ours, but they did fantastically well. Let us give a big round of applause. Thank you, Mr. Dharmendra and Mr. Kalpesh. Friends, long time back, one of my teachers told me, and that I remember still after very long time, if you want to master any subject, what you will do? You start teaching that subject. And it is really good thing. Because when you start taking that, the question comes and we start doing better. So the teacher becomes better than the student. And this is because the student made the teacher and not the teacher himself. Friends, today we had really great session. And Mr. Dharmendra and Mr. Kalpesh, they explained in the best possible way, and they have cleared our doubts. They are now becoming lawyers, which is very good thing. And because they were amongst us, so there were so many questions which have cleared our previous backlog, the ignorance you can say. We all of us thank them for taking a great trouble and enlightening us. At the same time, I will request them that whatever slides have been prepared should be circulated, because it will remember and it will give more importance. One more request to Mr. Dharmendra and Kalpesh. Please do not mind if we call them for some extra clarifications.
Yeah, that I think in the beginning of the lecture I told you $500 3 questions.
Yes, you can give the check where you don't have any account. They will accept. Thank you very much. At the same time, I thank the organizers who had arranged this function, and it was made a great session. But before we forget, there is one very important thing, and that is our normal procedure. We want to give a small memento to our guest speakers. They are not guest speakers, but our speakers. I will request Mr. Sajid to come here and give the mementos. You want to speak?
As I said in the start of the meeting, we expected a very good event, and Dharmendra and Mr. Kalpesh has really made it wonderful, and I think everybody of you enjoyed by the crowd's response and the way you are attentive. It shows that how was the event. Very well done, and thank you very much.
Thank you. So much, like you know that I may know the speaker, Ghar Ki Murgi wala. Really, this is not required. When this is the last time, but next time, definitely it should be.
No.
Okay, last time. Next time will also be last time.
This is the procedure actually.
Kalpesh, please come. Look forward to once you complete your dissertation, and we will invite you again and to an
Thanks for your patience hearing and giving me the opportunity, and I'll thank Mr. Dharmendra who had shown great confidence in me, and I thank you all for your attentiveness and patience hearing.
Yeah, one thing I want to tell you about Kapil, like he has finished all his modules, and also he has finished this one award writing paper, which is an additional paper. And now based on that, like he has to just appear for a peer interview, and then he will get his FCIR. Like his MCIR, it's a matter of a month or two before he gets his FCIR.
I call Mr. Franklin to announce our Mumbai meeting, which is on July 15th. He will explain more about it.
Good evening, friends. As our vision, we are growing now. We are now going global. Indian Institute of Quantity Surveyors is now going to have their next event in Mumbai on 14th of July. This is basically a launch within Maharashtra. We're going to be having two centers, Mumbai and Pune. I would request all of you, if you have any contacts in Mumbai and Pune, to probably forward it to our group. We will contact them either personally by phone and ensure that they come and attend our event. And if there is any more feedback you want to give about this event, which will be helpful for us in the Mumbai event. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Please be seated for a few minutes. Friends, in this whole session, who was most important? The guest speaker? No! If you were not here, what would have they done? So the most important people of the meeting are you. We thank all of you that you have come here and you took advantage, and at the same time we have encouraged them to give more speeches. Thank you very much. One small request, all of you are requested to make at least one member of IIQS so that our institute grows and lot of us get RICS, MRICS, fellow, etc., etc. So please make sure that all of you should make one member at least each time. Thank you very much. God bless you. See you next time.